you probably think that the least imaginative way, to really start talking about a subject is to look up its and recite its definition from the dictionary. Thank you. Webster's New Collegiate Dictionary defines culture as follows. And I think each of these definitions has something to do with what we're going to talk today, and they're very different definitions. 1, cultivation or tillage. 2, the act of developing the intellectual and moral faculties, especially by education. 3, expert care and training. 4, enlightenment and excellence of taste acquired by intellectual and aesthetic training. B, acquaintance with and taste in fine arts, humanities, and broad aspects of science. 5a, the integrated pattern of human behavior that includes thought, speech, action, and artifacts, and depends on man's capacity for learning and transmitting knowledge to succeeding generations. 5b, the customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group. And 6, cultivation of living material in prepared nutrient media and the product of such cultivation. It's even more interesting to go back to the Latin roots of this word, cultus cultus, which Father Earl will tell you is, of course, a fourth declension noun. There are two kind of clusters, and the first covers the bases we talk about: physical or mental cultivation, care, training, mental culture, training, education. But the second, I think, was most telling. And this is the way the Romans use the word cultus. Reverence, respect, or worship of the gods, and respect paid to men. Each of these definitions has some relevance to what we're going to talk about today. Even cultivation and tillage are not really far off the point. I guess that what impresses me when I look at that list of things that define culture is like, we're really, we're in over our heads. I mean, how can we deal with a topic like that today? How can we deal with transforming, a culture? The culture, the whole idea of culture is so huge. Now, I have an aside, in our culture today, we don't like the feeling that we're in over our heads. So that we prefer entertainment, and that's why we watch so much TV. I like to swerve into this topic a bit, because there's no doubt that TV has had a profound and pervasive influence on our culture. Neil Postman, in his book of a few years ago, Amusing Ourselves to Death, recommended to me by someone here in the audience today, studies the effect of TV on public discourse and on how we understand each other and relate to our world. Above all, Postman points out, TV is an entertainment medium. It's not really well suited to education. It educates poorly. It's mostly an entertainment medium. It doesn't give us the facts on what's going on in the world around us unless it can charge them with a lot of emotional or entertainment content. It doesn't stimulate thought, whether about religion, history, politics, or any subject, other than entertainment. It keeps us, rather, from thinking, giving us no time to reflect and react. Our so-called journalists and news personalities are picked for their mass appeal. Basically, as Postman said, what we get are a bunch of hairdos. And it's worse than that. Postman points this out, and he says, thanks to television, no political party would ever put up a fat man like William Howard Taft for office. But, and you might laugh at William Howard Taft, say, well, we don't miss William Howard Taft. But, what about a kind of a boisterous guy who really kind of wouldn't fit in a TV tube like Teddy Roosevelt? What about a man who knew that the job was too big for him and that he was really unworthy, but he was the man that had to do the job, somebody that really appreciated the scope and scale of the job and really didn't want it, like George Washington? What about a man who was exceedingly ugly and no amount of makeup or lighting could improve the outlines of his face, like Abraham Lincoln? Kind of sobering to think about that. Among its damaging effects on the human person is that TV lends itself to simplifying and condensing. So that basically, if we watch TV enough, we're never in over our heads. We understand the whole issue from 28 seconds of a news blur, carefully crafted and narrated news clips. We understand history from 57 minutes of carefully edited imagery, appropriately orchestrated. We don't need to think it through. We can't anyway. The medium gives us no time to think. We don't need to read because we're informed. Education is easy and fun. It's Sesame Street. It's not a lot of grinding, hard work, frustration, inscrutable questions, and late nights. And that's kind of what TV tends to do. And I just kind of wanted to point that out as an aside. And I'm going to be attacked on this, and it's going to be great because I think it gives the speakers a chance to take a bite out of me, and that's great. And you can too. But the point I needed to make, and this is the point of the meeting, is we're in over our heads when we're talking culture. We have to take a vantage point, and I think the best vantage point when you're in over your head is to stand on the shoulders of giants, among whom we have G.K. Chesterton, of course, and many others who've studied the problem of culture, what it means, and what its roots are. Perhaps the greatest of these minds is someone, Christopher Dawson, who himself stated that the problem of understanding culture is just grasping Western culture is really too big for any one mind. But it's key to what Dawson talks about is that religion and culture are intimately bound. When religion thrives, culture thrives. When it is fertile, when religion dies, culture dies with it. This theme resonates, of course, in Chesterton, and of course, Dawson knew his Chesterton. Christianity, at the same time, has a unique power to stand apart from its culture. As Dawson points out in Religion and the Rise of Western Culture, Christianity has always stood, it stood in contrast and contradiction to the barbaric and pagan world of the early years of Christianity. And Newman will say later, that the church is always in the world and always out of it. In the process of conquering Western Europe, after the collapse, after the collapse of Roman civilization, Christianity preserved the best parts of pagan culture. This is a point that Chesterton brings up quite a bit, and it's as Alfred tells the Danes in the Battle of the White Horse. It is only Christian men guard even heathen things. The intimacy of religion and culture is something I think that you're going to catch from all of our speakers today. The two are inextricably bound, and we need to understand and appreciate that in order to do the task of transforming the culture. The transformation of our culture is a daunting subject. We're well in over our heads here. As Chesterton said about his conversion, the subject is much too large to describe, and we will proceed to describe it. We're going to attack this subject really from a number of viewpoints, but most of the emphasis we're going to have today is from the direction of what we call the arts. And we have a number of giants whose shoulders we can stand on in the arts. who worked on the problem of transforming the culture. Those of you who are familiar with C.S. Lewis, for example, know his comment about smuggling a little theology into his fiction. To achieve our end today, we've assembled a group of speakers who I think are just, I can't imagine four better speakers for this subject. Each of these people is a giant in his own field.